In 1954, after the Korean War ended, my father boarded a boat for the United States. He was 19 years old, and as you can imagine, there were many things about his new life that were very different. But nothing astounded him more than the American Public Library. I often think about the library from my father's perspective as an immigrant teenager. You walk in, you get an armful of books, and you walk out again without paying a single cent. The librarians say, "Bring them back when you're done." Why does that even work? You can't do it with anything else in quite the same way, only with books, only at the library. Naturally, my father raised me and my siblings as faithful library patrons, and for me this proved to have two enormous blessings. First, like many of us who grow up to be writers and artists and dreamers, I was something of a misfit. We were the only Korean family in the whole town until I was 8 years old. I endured racist taunts in elementary school, invisibility in junior high, and don't get me started on high school. The books in the library showed me that there was a very big world out there, big enough for even misfits like me to eventually find a place. Yeah, that's right, Miss Prom Queen, class of 77, that weird girl you ignored all those years. She's up here giving a TED Talk. Even more important, books provided me with practice. Practice at life. Life can be so bewildering for young people, for a lot of adults too, and most vexing of all, life isn't fair. We all need all the practice we can get at facing life's unfairness with both grace and grit. The books I read showed me how other people faced unfairness in hundreds, thousands of different ways, which did not include pressing buttons to blow things up. Instead, through the characters I came to love, I practiced facing unfairness with bitterness and rancor sometimes, but also with hope, with righteous anger, with determination. I wasn't taught these remarkable truths. I learned them by being immersed in story, not lessons that would be forgotten, but stories that became a part of me. Because in order to find yourself in a book, you first have to lose yourself in a book. If books have the power to help us find ourselves, then a children's book has superpowers. Because you never again love a book the way you do when you're a child. Most of us remember our favorite childhood books for our entire lives. That is a powerful love. Books have this kind of power because reading is a very complex activity. It lights up our brains in breadth and depth like nothing else. And in the developing brains of children, sustained reading is vital to foster critical thinking, creativity and imagination, emotional intelligence. After food and shelter and love, one of the most valuable things we can pass on to all kids is a passion for books. So what is it we want our kids to find in books? What do we want them to practice? Why do we read anyway? For entertainment, of course. For education and enlightenment. And today I want to talk about reading for the development of empathy, the kind of empathy that can lead to engagement. Can a children's book really do this? Can a book help make a reader a better human being? In 2010, A Long Walk to Water was published. It's based on the true life story of a man named Salva Dut. I first met Salva in 2004 through my husband, who's a journalist. In 1985, when Salva was only 11 years old, he had to flee the civil war in Sudan in East Africa. Separated from his family, he became one of the so-called lost boys of Sudan, about 17,000 of them, who had to make a harrowing journey of hundreds of miles on foot to escape the war. More than 5,000 of them died during the journey. At the age of 11, Selva faced things no human being should have to face, and some of the lost boys were as young as 5 years old. Not fair. The war lasted more than 20 years. In 2011, South Sudan gained its independence and became the world's newest nation. After that terrible journey, Selva lived for the next 10 years in the appalling conditions of refugee camps. In the mid-1990s, he got some incredible news. Of the more than 2 million Sudanese refugees, he was one of about 3,800 selected to receive an immigrant visa to the United States. Selva was relocated to Rochester, New York, where his adjustment was even greater than my father's. There were so many white people. At first, they all looked alike. Selva was adopted by an American family. He went to school, learned English, got a job. In 2003, he founded the nonprofit organization Water for South Sudan. Over the past 10 years, Water for South Sudan has drilled 259 wells in some of the most remote regions of South Sudan, bringing clean water to hundreds of thousands of people who've never had it before. Selva does this, a former refugee, poorest of the poor on this planet. I found this so incredible that I wanted to share it with young people. The book tells about Selva's escape from the war and his eventual return to South Sudan, alongside the fictional story of Nya, a young girl who lives in South Sudan today. Like most girls and young women in South Sudan, Nya walks hours every day to fetch water for her family. She gets the water from places like this. Not fair. Her life begins to change when Selva arrives in her village to drill a well. 2 stories, Nya's and Selva's, to show readers here in the US unfairness on an entirely different scale from their own experiences. In the 5 years since the book was published, I've received hundreds of letters from readers and their teachers, parents, librarians. Many teachers have written to me to say how excited they are to see their students so engaged with a book. Probably best of all are comments like this one from a teacher in upstate New York. "My non-readers love it," she said. "For the first time, all of them are reading beyond the assigned chapter. And as they read, they practice Selva's responses to the unfairness he faced, hope and perseverance. To my amazement, they are putting that practice into practice. They go out and raise money. They hold walkathons carrying water. They sell wristbands. They save pennies. It's hard work. It takes hope and perseverance. Students at deprived urban schools and struggling rural schools have raised and donated money, and those teachers tell me how important it is for their students to learn that there are people in the world a lot worse off than they are." When I wrote the book, I was hoping that students would see Selva as a terrific example of one person making a difference. But what is happening goes far beyond that. To date, readers of A Long Walk to Water have raised more than $1 million for Water for South Sudan. That is the rough equivalent of about 60 wells, each one of them serving more than 2,000 people who no longer have to fear illness and death from waterborne diseases, especially the infants and children. And a well in a village means far more than the basic human need of clean water, because when girls like Nya no longer have to walk for hours every day to fetch water, they have time to go to school. Study after study proves the truth of economist Lawrence Summers' statement that investment in the education of girls may well be the highest return investment available in the developing world. Readers' empathy for Salva and Nia has turned them from normal, ordinary students into heroes who are saving lives every single day and enabling girls to get an education. That is significant. That's real. And two crucial pathways are being laid down. The first in their brains, reading for practice at life. The second in their lives, empathy igniting engagement. There are other books that instill the kind of empathy that leads to action. Wonder by R.J. Palacio is at the center of anti-bullying campaigns. Crenshaw by Catherine Applegate has inspired food drives for the homeless. And I cannot wait for readers to discover the new book, All American Boys, by Jason Reynolds and Brendan Kiley, which is going to help them engage with the urgent question of race relations in this country. Whatever the unfairness, I promise you there is a great book for young readers to fit, and if there isn't, my terrific colleagues in the field will write it. We adults are neglecting or at least underusing a resource with tremendous potential for good, that powerful love young people have for stories. Readers lose themselves in Salva's story, and in doing so, they find themselves with powers they never knew they had, the power to fight against the world's unfairness. So, can a children's book save the world? No. But the young people who read them can.